When you were informed that you would be part of the RPF's Disciplinary Committee, did you not feel a sense of fear?
I mean, I'm a member of the RPF, and when you're called to serve, you serve. But I think, definitely it was, fear of the unknown. Like, how did I even make that list? Like, where did that come from?
When you think about AI designing an education system for Africa, can it?
First of all, I think AI cannot design any education system, let alone an African education system.
As CEO of Kepler, you've really put a huge emphasis on making the university synonymous with sports.
Correct.
What is the big idea behind that?
In essence, we want to become the Africa's sports university.
This is the very, very best. I introduce the very, very next. Big deal, you know this is the big league. Sanga mumihanda ya Kigali, make a big fish. Word on the street turakaze. Habari gani mumeze mute. Yutse nshimimana kuva honda mukiye. If you want the long form, come close and rabule. Wait, what?
The long form.
What did he say?
The long form.
What?
The long form.
The long form. The long form. Hello there. My guest this week on the Long Form podcast is Nathalie Munyampenda, a strategic communications expert. Nathalie is the CEO of Kepler, a Rwandan institute of higher learning. We shall discuss her personal values and her thoughts on what makes President Kagame such an exceptional leader. We shall also examine her ambitions for Kepler, as well as what young people need to do to prepare themselves for an AI future. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to make a deal with you. About 69.5% of you who watched this very podcast haven't hit the subscribe button yet. So, here's the deal I want to make with you. If you hit that subscribe button today, I promise you that my team and I will keep making the show better and better in every single way. So, go ahead and hit that subscribe button today. And now, let's get into the show. Nathalie, welcome to the Long Form podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I'd call you probably one of the most confident people, fearless people I know. I've known you, close to maybe 15 years now. But let me ask you a question, and try to be as honest as you can. When you were informed that you would be part of the RPF's Disciplinary Committee, did you not feel a sense of fear?
Yes, I think fear, or maybe understanding the responsibility or fear of the unknown for sure, I think. And I mean, I'm a member of the RPF, and when you're called to serve, you serve. But I think, definitely it was, fear of the unknown. Like, how did I even make that list? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, because when you think about it, it's not, you're when you think about that, such posts, right? You're thinking this is Musée Tito, these
Right.
big guys, these older gentlemen. Very often they are gentlemen, and now there's you, barely 40. Now you're there, and it's like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, that's definitely the direction. What am I doing here? And I'm not barely 40, I'm not close to 40. I think you need to, barely 40 means soon. But I think it's, as a country, we are quite different in the sense that young people are in positions of leadership, and I'm talking here outside of anything related to the party, but just generally in the private sector, in the public sector, it's really it's very common to see young people at all tables, and I think it's a credit to our country and to the RPF and our leadership about, using, in Kinyarwanda they say, amaboko, the arms that we have, which is young people. In other countries, like when we go to meetings outside of Rwanda, that's really when you see, like, because you come with this confidence or this, you almost take it for granted that that's how things are. You get outside and you're like everyone is my dad's age.
Yeah.
And that is normal. And the expectation that young people have is I have to wait till I'm 60 to be in any leadership position. And here, you work and you become a leader, not as a favor, but it's really a privilege to be able to do things at such a young age. I think it's a huge opportunity for us.
How hard has it been for you to take that space? Especially, again, like when you think about your youth, the responsibilities that come with that kind of leadership, is it something that you felt comfortable embracing? Or was it one of those things where you have to sit down and say, okay,
Yeah, I mean, in Rwanda, I think, I hope that the young people who get to serve in any capacity really have a moment to say, this is huge or this is beyond me, but I'm going to do my best. I think that's the kind of thing that I've always seen. Any position in whether it's work or social or whatever, it's an opportunity to serve and let me do something. I think one of the things that I've learned actually from our elders, in whether it's in the party or in our community, is the difference between, let's say, an American view of leadership, which is I have done this, on your CV, I have built this. In our version, in the Rwandan version, it's more, I'm called to serve because I'm needed here, and let me do my best here. And it's a different view. It's more like, a view of, I'm the best for the job, therefore I have earned or I am worthy to be here. With Rwanda, it's more like, hey, I have some skills and they've seen that I have some potential, because a lot of it is they've seen potential. You haven't done anything. Like most of the things yourself, Sanny, like the positions you've had, I've had, some of it is like you're like fresh and make a lot of mistakes, and they kind of cater for you learning along the way. Because your attitude is, hey, I'm here to serve. I think in Rwanda, leadership is a lot more about attitude than capacity, because everybody's young. You're making mistakes. And sometimes those mistakes cost you, but that's also a learning that, there's consequences to the decisions we make as leaders.
What have been the biggest mistakes you've made?
I think... the first, I think, is that I came from I lived in Canada a long time, and I came from this perspective that, your practical skills or your technical skills are enough. Like, if you make me the leader, I'm competent. You come with this like confidence, like I'm competent, and therefore you must listen to me because I am the most competent person in the room. I think that. What they call the collective diaspora attitude, like, I have a PhD from, Harvard, therefore I know what I'm doing. And I think realizing that that's not how you actually lead, because leading is about influence, right? And leading is about influence, and therefore when you're leading, when people should want to follow you. And I think I thought that people should follow you from expertise, which is a common mistake. But really, people follow you because they trust you. They see that you care for them. And I was not a good leader. I think when my first so-called leadership position, management position, I would say, I was a horrible leader, because I would come and say, listen, we're going to do it like this. Let's go. And people would be like, but I think, and I'd be like, no. I'm the most competent person in the room. Let's do it this way. So that was... And it's funny because we got a lot of things done, but at the end of it, I would feel everyone in the room is not happy, including myself, because you're in a team where you are also part of the problem and you just don't know how to fix it. So I think after that first, I would say, attempt at leadership, I got a lot of coaching to understand, how your personality gets in the way, why some people process. So I'm a fast processor of information, and I expect people to process information fast. And so when you're slow, I am really poor at managing that. And I've had to learn over 10 years to be someone who lets people process information, because you need them as part of the team. They have something that they bring, and so let them process the information and get to work. Don't impose how quickly people have to understand, so that you can get it done as quickly as possible.
Now, as CEO of Kepler now, what are the lessons from the past, other than that one, right?
Yeah.
Of giving people the space to figure things out themselves. What are the lessons that you now apply, whether it's running the sports teams, whether it's running the universities, whether it's even perhaps even running your household? What are the lessons from that time, years of life after university, that you now apply today?
I think so. I think people have to feel like they're part of building something great. Like, even if they're a finance officer and their day-to-day is, crunching numbers and going to the bank, and they have to feel like the work that I'm doing is part of what we're building. And the job of the CEO is to tell a story consistently about what is it that we're building and how you're part of it. And we need each other to get there. It's not the CEO's vision and everyone is coming to work for them. It's our vision and everyone within our little bubble, this world that we're building, this amazing team that we are. It's like you're a part of Team Kepler. Team Kepler is the place to be, and I'm in this team, and we're going in this direction. I think it's and part of there are other things that are really important, like making sure you have cash at the end of the year to make sure that you can pay for the dreams and the vision that you have. That's, I think because I was a leader without managing large budgets, I did not see where this money came from and how it was spent. And I think it's really important very quickly to learn what things cost. And also, I think a big lesson is, I'm not afraid of taking huge risks, but, as a CEO, you have to count these risks cost how much, and how does this, and if it fails, how much, what kind of dent does it do to the organization? And the other thing I think is hiring good people. Like, I'm telling you, the success, 90% of your success is how well you hire people to walk with you on this journey. And I've become obsessed with hiring well. And
talent.
Yes, hiring well, meaning somebody who is not just competent for the job, but has the right attitude and is really excited to build with you. Because, there are people, there's a place for people who want to come as a consultant and say, I want to do X, Y, Z and leave. But for people who are building with you, especially at a senior level, you want to make sure that they're passionate. And by the way, if you get people to work on their passions, you've got like bonus points, because now they're doing it for themselves. That's what you want.
You like me, you're probably a person who looks at our president and takes a lot of lessons from how he navigates life, how he navigates family, how he navigates the country, how he navigates our hopes and fears. I would like to, there's a lot that I personally take away from that. I'd like to hear from you. What are the things that he does that you've taken and made your own? And President, I mean President
Kagame?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I really admire President Kagame, because I think, he is operating in a world that did not exist. So it's like, in other words, you're dreaming something that it has never been done, and you're saying, we're going to do it, and then you're saying, what are the practical steps? Who are the people we need to go with? But this idea of, not always, the details are important because they build the dream, but like, he has become our chief storyteller. And this idea of keeping people focused on what is it that we're building and giving people the confidence. He's taken a people, we've come out of the genocide against the Tutsi. There's nothing. We have no money. We are heartbroken beyond anything. And he's telling people, hey, we're going to build this Rwanda. And this Rwanda is not even remotely close. So the best thing that could have happened at that time for us would have been, we bury the bodies and, we sit in therapy for 10, 15 years, and maybe we come out to a point where we can work. And he's saying, no therapy, because at that time those resources did not exist. And he's saying, let's get to work. Everybody, including the people who've survived. It's crazy. It requires un sang-froid, a level of cold-bloodedness to say, I can see that this vision we have is important for everyone. So let's work towards that. It requires a single-mindedness that is really important. So I admire that, and being able to tell people consistently, hey, we're going in this direction. This idea of thinking big, but saying to people, this is the big we're saying. And you repeat it often enough. Ndu Munyarwanda. What does it mean to be Rwandan? Today, young people, they don't come from our time. Like conversations when we were there was like, oh, this person was from Kenya. This person was from Congo. Oh, this person is from the southern part of Rwanda. Like young people now, they're like, at most, all of them want to be from Kigali, But they feel a sense of being Rwandan. That is also something that was built. It wasn't, people take that for granted. So number one is this idea of telling the story around where we're going, the direction, the vision. Number two is he's not afraid to make hard decisions. And I think, and these decisions that affect even the people who are closest to him, he's not afraid to, because I think as a CEO, especially as a female CEO, you want people to like you. You get so, you don't want to be the bad guy all the time. There are days where I go home and I'm like, I'm tired of being the bad guy. I also want people, and by the way, it's actually a brain thing, because as a CEO, you are the good guy. You get all the privileges, but human beings, we tend to have a little bit of a self-pity, where you say, I'm making all the hard decisions. I'm the one making all the cuts. I'm the one who's saying no all the time to everybody. And I want to be the good guy. And this, what I respect about him is that in times of crisis, in good and bad times, he will take, I think he said it once, you have to make the hard decision as quickly as possible. And that's something that I've learned, at least in the last 5 years. You have to become comfortable with taking hard decisions. You consult, but at the end of the day, you absorb that responsibility of taking this hard decision. And the last thing is, sometimes you have to be bold. Like this, a lot of the things that we see, the Visit Rwanda, the big projects, a lot of that is moonshot. Moonshot meaning it's like a one crazy, rock in space, and then it lands on something, And being that level of boldness for the type of things that at least I'm building, it resonates with me, because and then I think the way that he handles himself, because, he gets a lot of love, but he gets a lot of hate. Like, literally, he's our shock absorber as a person in this country. So being comfortable with absorbing shock is something that we take really for granted that he's given us. And I think learning to get out of my own way and accept that if I want to get the praise, that also comes with the hate, but that the hate also is to protect. That's your job. Your job is also to protect the teams that you're leading, etc. I think, though, there's a lot of things there, but his personal discipline around accepting to be the shock absorber. I think maybe that comes from being a soldier for a long time and the kind of challenges he faced as a young person. But he takes it as this is part of his life. The rest of us have had to learn and cry through a shock absorption. But it's something that we can learn from him.
And one of the things that I personally, I'll sometimes I'll stand outside, just kind of like look at the cityscape, and look at all the different projects that are happening as we speak, right? So you'll see what's happening at Roi Faisal. Then you'll look at the other side. There's something happening over, all these different major developmental, and at every single one, he's able. One, he knows what's happening.
Correct.
Like that ability to create systems where you have, information trickling up and then information trickling down.
Sure.
And being able to manage that almost the bureaucratic excellence is something that I really take away. Is like, okay, how do you create systems? Because fundamentally it seems to me that he's a systems guy.
Yeah.
And as a CEO, you're probably a systems person as well. And so anyway, that's
but the excellence is a good point. I think, anyone who's ever been in his vicinity understands that this person, his excellency is about, excellence and excellence in every detail. And I think the kind of country we were building as a small country where the people are gold, they're the gold above ground. We have developing systems, excellent systems, is really important. And I think we're lucky to see it in real time. Like I think if we can do anything is to, especially young leaders in the private and public sector, we need to really absorb this, because you look at what it can build when you hold yourself to a certain standard. Like I always remember, maybe when we were a little bit younger, he would always say, like, why do we need somebody to come and tell us to clean our yards? Why do we need to tell, to have offices that run on time, that you service, customer service, good service? Like, why does somebody need to come and pay for a study to study why this is important? We know this. And intrinsically, we need to treat ourselves the way that we want people to treat us, right? And so if we want people to treat us with dignity, we must have dignity ourselves. So I think, yeah, he just, as you said, I think he reads a lot. I think a lot of young people with social media and just easy, we don't read. And I think from what I hear, maybe it's a rumor, that he reads vast amounts of information in health, in medicine, he reads in engineering. So he's keeping his brain, because he's going to pull from that information at some point to say, hey, why does this building look like this? I think there's another way to do this energy thing, because he's read it somewhere. And people, it doesn't come out of nowhere. He's investing in his own knowledge. So that's something also to learn from him.
When someone hears you speak and listens to you speak with that nice accent over there, they wouldn't know that you were born in Mobutu Sese Seko's Zaire.
Zaire, yes.
You're, what do they call them? Zairewas.
Yes, indeed.
We used to call them about Dubai. So take us to that place. Do you remember much about growing up in Kinshasa of that time?
No, I was very young. What I do remember is kind of like everybody, all the young people, the people visiting, and adults dancing in the living room. I remember, my dad was a telecom engineer, so we had the first cell phones, the big ones.
Telecel.
Telecel. My dad worked for Telecel. Yes. So those are the few memories I have. We, in between, left Congo to go to South Africa, so I have more memories in South Africa.
But was there any reason that you guys left Congo?
I think my parents were looking for an opportunity. It was, there was the pillage. There were protests in Congo, and there was instability even in the 90s, early 90s. So my parents wanted to find a better life in South Africa, and so we left. South Africa is where I have more memories. I went to primary school in South Africa. That's where the English was brought in. But my dad has always been, my parents were people who were always thinking ahead. So we even learned English in Congo. So primary school in South Africa, we played things like baseball and like regular, South African things. But, there, the genocide against the Tutsi happened when we were in South Africa. And so I think, experiencing it on TV is something I also remember, the images on TV when we were young. But, eventually we went back to Congo, and I was a little bit older. And then I remember distinctly hearing for the first time, this person is Rwandese. That's the first time I had that. But for us, it didn't resonate because we were, raised Congolese,
yes,
essentially, yeah.
So if we can look at the years properly. Did you go to South Africa before Nelson Mandela was released?
No, after. He was released in 1990. We went in between his release and when he became president in 1994, because I have a memory of him becoming president in South Africa.
So you were not a child of You never went through the whole apartheid thing.
So people don't know this, but between 1990 and 1994, apartheid was essentially still around. It was a very difficult time. I think my experience with racism in South Africa really changed the way I view being African and Rwandan.
How?
Because I think when South Africans have experienced and maybe continue to experience someone who treats you like a second-class citizen in your country. And, you cannot access certain things. They make sure you're not getting the funding, but you're doing all the work. This sense of you are not even a second-class citizen, you're not a human being like me. And we were living in Pretoria. My mom, at the time, worked for the Rwandan embassy right after the genocide against the Tutsi. But just the walk from school to home, the way that white people were talking to us and treating us, it really is a core memory for me, because when we came back to Congo and we moved to Rwanda, I remember the first thing that I felt when I came to Rwanda. Remember, this is 98. We have still Abachenjezi in the north. We have some insecurity. People are trying to find themselves. Schools are just starting to operate properly. But just this feeling of acceptance, and I'm home, and no one's asking me, who are you? And this sense of belonging is so powerful that even when I moved to Canada, even when I run into racists at any point after that, I always have this sense of I belong somewhere. And
I have a country.
I have a country. And I think young people born today in Rwanda really take that for granted. But it's not Congo was very difficult in the way that we left, because we left in the Congo War. But that sense of when you're in South Africa and you're experiencing racism on a daily basis, like things like they were taking our grades down when we in primary school. You're telling a child they're not smart enough. You're not smart enough like this other person, and you know very well
so
that they are.
Wait. They would actually say you had gotten 80 in math.
Correct.
They would a teacher would go out of their way
100%.
to reduce your grades.
South African racism is in your face. This was right in your face racism, and I think experiencing that and coming to Rwanda and then realizing, hey, this is my country. This is my country. No one can take this away from me, wherever I am in the world. Eventually I became Canadian as well, but I always feel like, when they say go home, when you're in the US and they're like, go home to your country, I'm like, don't worry, I have my country. This sense of belonging and identity is extremely powerful. And it's actually part of the challenges that we face with Rwandan diaspora, children of Rwandan diaspora all around the world, the teenagers struggling with identity. But me, I distinctly understand this, because I know for me when it happened, when I was 11, 12, coming to Rwanda, I distinctly felt at home. And that's why whatever happens, I'm always coming back to Rwanda, because it's like, it's home.
Life tends to take you all over the place. When I was much younger, I thought I'd be a lawyer. I went to law school.
Me too.
And there you go. And now I want to be a farmer / podcaster. It's crazy. You never really know where life will take you.
This is true.
But yours is a special case. We've talked about you going to Canada. You went there, did your undergrad in international development, did your master's in strategic communications. You graduate, you come back to Rwanda, do a bit of work in government communications, but then end up at the next Einstein forum, and now you're the CEO of Kepler, which is an educational.
Yes.
Look, we can all agree that is a very strange path to finally end up being, I wouldn't call you mwalimu, but
indeed.
Yeah, you're pretty much mwalimu.
Yes.
Did you at any point see, the Nathalie that's sitting right in front of me?
No.
And if you...
No, I think it's very interesting, and it may be an indication of what the future looks like for most young people. I think we were raised in a traditional time where you were something. You were a doctor, you were a lawyer, you
engineer.
You were an accountant. You go and you study to be an accountant, and you're an accountant for 35 years, you retire as an accountant. Today, we are, I would say maybe that in-between generation, so those coming on 40 or just above 40 to 50, where you're kind of moving around. But I think the future is that young people will be moving around quite a bit. But I will say that even when I wanted to be a lawyer and thought I was going to be a lawyer, it didn't work out. I thought I was going to, at some point I thought I was going to be like in diplomacy, and I'm very far from what is required to be a diplomat. But I've always taught. Teaching is a passion of mine, and even when I was at a very young age, when I was asked to teach, I loved it. Because the spark that you see in people's eyes when they understand something or they learn something new, I only realize it now, much older, that this was my destined path anyways, right? And whatever else is happening is leading you towards this thing that you're passionate about it. You just don't know what that looks like. You just get there. I think a lot of people, you eventually figure out your passion, hopefully before 40. But I love teaching and I love education because I personally think that the way the world is going, people are the gold above ground, and making sure that particularly young people, particularly Rwandans, have what they need to continue to leverage the knowledge they have to build the society we are in is something that has kept me up. Even when I was at the Next Einstein Forum, for example, at Ames, this question of, transition to jobs would keep me up at night. Like, employers would say the skills that young people have, they're not aligning with
the job market.
The job market. And I would be like, but why? What is it that's happening that we're missing? And then I'd say, how can we add that in the curriculum? And they'd be like, curriculum requires to be designed and accredited. And I'd be like, no, but even if you're studying to be an engineer, why can't we add what the employers are saying? So this question has really kept me up at night, even when I was in the distinctly more research institution. So now I just get to do it on a daily basis with a great team. But yeah, teaching and writing, teaching, and thinking, I think is my future.
You said something earlier about the way the future is, right? So we would see our parents and we would think, okay, we're going to have professions, right? So I'm good at math. I'm going to do math, physics, and chemistry, then go to university, do engineering, and that's my path in life. I will be an engineer. And you said that young people today are very likely to keep pivoting in their lives, in their professions. They will maybe study journalism, but maybe end up being God knows what.
I mean, you're a farmer, and both of us have been journalists.
Yeah.
So look at us now.
Yeah. So the question then becomes, and this is maybe for the young people who are listening, is how do you prepare for a future, a future profession that you don't even know that you're going to end up in?
It's a good question. I think so. People mistake education with the four walls in which you're studying. So school, whether it's in high school and in university, serves as a purpose of allowing you to learn with others, but also learn to think. So it's like activating muscles. Like you go to the gym, there's a warm-up. And I feel like, if you warm up, right, you should warm up. But the warm-up is the time that you spend learning with others. And I think once you've warmed up, there is a lot that you will learn, that especially young people now, that you will learn yourselves. So there's lifelong learning, there's experience through work, but also there is whatever revolution we're in. If AI didn't exist, when we were coming on university, there was Yahoo Mail that we went to one computer downtown Kigali to go and write our emails. So it's basically, what is the foundation that we should be teaching young people to allow them to think and to then learn where am I getting new knowledge, because in a few years the jobs that required you to have Excel might not exist, and they might be, AI will be doing Excel. What will you do when AI does Excel, when you're being paid now to do Excel? So in the sense, in my opinion, what we need to do is a foundation. What is the foundation? And foundation for me is the thinking. Thinking, writing, counting. How do I look at trends? How do I make decisions from the information I'm reading? And by the way, that's what we teach AI, right? All the things that we have to teach AI is what you should be doing. It's not giving away your thinking for the computer to do it. It's actually what is the things that I should be thinking about that then now the AI can help me synthesize and get better information. Right?
Yeah.
So those type of skills, young people have to go and look for them themselves. But, there are things that are not going to go away. We still need human touch with doctors. We still need human touch with teachers. Teachers are not going away for right now. We're not going to run out of physical teachers. So there are things that we will continue to see, but most likely what we need to do is really what is the base for which we have to make sure that young people, and that includes ethics, it includes history, because AI, as we speak, is absorbing whatever is being taught to it and regurgitating history that does not exist. And we're very likely going to see, particularly African history, will take the biggest hit. So we have to know our history. You shouldn't wait for ChatGPT to tell you your history. We should be transmitting history and making sure that it's written, codified, and being taught back to us. And we're telling the stories of our history, or else, my dear, in a few years, we will have someone else telling us a completely different story about our country. So there are things that we have to teach as a base, but the rest, young people are going to get anyways in the future.
Now that we've started the topic of the future of education, let's talk about that. I saw something online where you were musing about the possibility of AI designing the new African education system. Tell us more. When you think about AI designing an education system for Africa, can it? And if it can, do you think that it's actually a good idea to give AI such responsibilities?
First of all, I think AI cannot design any education system, let alone an African education system. So I want to make that clear. But I think that it's important for us to articulate what we want an African education system to look like. So what we have done in the past is, besides what I think is fundamental, digital skills, numeracy, learning to read, write, and count, which is important no matter which world you're living in. We have really just always absorbed content from elsewhere. And we have codified people's knowledge as our own, and it's not true. Africa has thousands of years of knowledge. We have sent math and everything else outward, and they've given it back to us, and then they've said it's our knowledge. So in essence, if we allow ourselves, because there's a lot of things that come with building AI, the data centers are in Europe or in Asia or in the US. So the
models are there.
Yes, we've offloaded all the responsibility of AI building anything to other people. So number one, we have to actually build capacity to build AI, data centers, the infrastructure, the scientists to do that. If we do that, then we have to sit together and define what is it that we want our education system to look like. For me, for example, the fact that we do not have so much resources on African history and art and thought and politics is, for me, a huge danger, because I promise you it's going to be rewritten. And because we collect everything from outside, they're going to also rewrite our history, and which they've done for hundreds of years anyways.
Now they'll use tech to
100%.
make it even better.
And all these young people who are on TikTok all day, they're going to be like, oh my God, did you know in Egypt such and such happened? Which is entirely not true. So if we want AI to design history, first of all, we need to teach AI. We have to have our own algorithms and scientists and data centers and infrastructure. And then we need to teach it what truly has happened in Africa. And then we can say, now design me some, write me a lesson plan, because that's what AI can do. It can write you a lesson plan. But if it gives you what it's been fed. And right now, everything that's been fed is completely outside of Africa. So no, right now, today, it should not design an African education system.
As CEO of Kepler, you've really put a huge emphasis on making the university synonymous with sports.
Correct.
What is the big idea behind that?
It's a good question. I think for me, our goal, we have a twofold goal. The first is we really want to educate Africa's athletes. So in essence, we want to become the Africa's sports university. And it is, in universities we see across the world that do huge sports things, they teach other things. They teach medicine, but they do it within a system that is, focused on sports. And that's our big idea from the university perspective. But essentially, we also want to run a profitable sports business, which relies on infrastructure, so a high-performance sports center, esports, a few other things that are in our strategy. So it's a twofold thing. Number one, we want to build a sports university, and that means basically that athletes from across Africa come and study at Kepler in a hybrid system, so in person, online. That's what we're building, and on the other side, we want to run a profitable sports business because we already have the infrastructure. It's taken a huge amount of investment, and thank you to our board for taking this crazy idea and allowing it to run. And now we have the resources to kind of do both. And I mean, I'm chasing funding for that. Hopefully, knock on wood that we get it, because it's a huge dream, and we think that it would be advantageous to Rwanda. But also, I think athletes should have a good life. They should have the resources to build their own lives after they play professionally. That was the core of it, was that I had been seeing more and more reports of football stars who were on the street, with nothing else to do after they had been big stars. And we know that that's the case in all African countries. And I kept asking, why? How can we design a system that allows them really to get a good education? Not just some general degree that, you can't do anything with, but what can they do, and add entrepreneurship and add some coding. So when they're done, they really are a 21st century worker, They can do that and play, by the way, which is what is happening with some of our NBA athletes. They do other things. They invest, they're investors. So we want to make sure that they're living a good life. That was the problem I was trying to solve at the time. And now it's become, a big vision.
Let's talk about fundraising, which is something that you brought up, because you do have a huge vision. But when you think about fundraising, very often you don't fundraise in a vacuum. Rwanda right now has taken there's been a huge negative toll on Rwanda because of the DRC's internal problems. In terms, we've been hit on when it comes to our reputation at every level, right? So you're seeing the Visit Rwanda brand being punished. You see our mining sector being punished, and I'm pretty sure that even our abilities to fundraise internationally has been punished. But you know a lot better than me. Have you seen a certain correlation between what you're trying to do, which is fundraise for your ambitions at the university, being negatively affected by what's happening across our borders?
I think all geopolitical issues, even with the thing related to USAID and the US, all geopolitical issues, and I wish young people understood this, because young people will say, politics has nothing to do with me. I just want to live my life. But geopolitics in the region affect all our lives. They affect inflation. They affect, there's so many things that we are never outside of the political situation we find ourselves in. So I think 100%, it's not just related to the DRC, but in general, I think there's a lot of tension and pullback from funders. There's, the US situation. There's, all the wars that are happening. So generally, I think it's a tough fundraising environment. But I will say that we see pockets of foundations and philanthropists who have not actually changed their minds. They are we see particularly in the education sector with the MasterCard Foundation, for example, that has stayed true to what they're funding, which is how do we get young people to work. So we have definitely felt some pressure with that, particularly with new funders. They're just like, I just don't want the attention right now. But we have a lot of people who are committed to continuing to fund education, to continuing to fund sports, young people mostly. And in that sense, a lot of philanthropists continue to do that, a lot of them anonymously. So we can't talk about them, but there's a lot of people who are still committed to that. And in general, people, when you're raising money, it's about people want to understand the story you're telling and whether they have a part to play in supporting your story. And that's really the bottom line. It's not about, facts are important and the impact you're having is really important, but it's really about them saying, hey, I want to be part of this thing that you're building. And we continue to see that in the world, even for Rwanda. Even if we have challenges, there are a lot more people across the continent, across the world who support us.
Yeah. Now, let's talk communications, because it would be remiss of me not to discuss that topic with you. Now, those who know you know that back in around 2013, 2014, you were the coordinator of the Office of the Government Spokesperson. So that was pretty much what Yolande Makolo does, right? So trying to coordinate
Not
government communication. Not at the same level,
Yeah,
but pretty much at that, in terms of tasks, right?
Sure.
So trying to formulate a government message and dealing with a lot of different stakeholders, media and all that. Now, when you were the coordinator, that was in the very first ideation of M23.
Sure.
Right? So that's the very first time they take Goma.
They almost take Goma.
They took Goma and then they left after 9 days, remember?
Yes.
And then, there is, because I can imagine as young as you were having to deal with that was also the same time. That's during Barack Obama, he's cutting aid. There's a ton of pressure. Now, you had to help coordinate government communications in that time, using the tools that were at your disposal, communication tools. Now, 10 years plus, we're back like Correct. It never left, right? It's M23 again, the Belgians and the Canadians and all this, it's all the same. But when you look at what was happening then in terms of communications, and you see what's happening now in terms of communications and how communications and communication tools are weaponized or utilized by the not the belligerents, but the different people on either sides. I'd be interested in hearing you kind of analyze what it looked like then versus how it looks like now, and maybe also advising on how do we use the tools that exist today to fight the war that exists today?
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole different world, I would say. At the time in 2013, first of all, the response was, there's always been, communication is about building a narrative, building a story. And the story today that is being built is that Rwanda is the belligerent that's always attacking the victimized DRC. And that's the narrative that has been built over 20 years, by the way. It even precedes my time in the government. And as someone who's from Congo, I can, give a whole other 1 hour lesson on how this has happened. And it's a narrative that's being built and continues to be built. And so the question at the time that we had is, how do you respond to a narrative that is not true factually, but that has been invested in financially? There's lobbying groups that are happening. There's media that has their own reasons for pushing this narrative. And how do you respond? So I think in 2013, we were using the tools that were there, which is how do you get media who are more neutral to come and see what's happening on the ground, so that they can see that there is no victimized DRC. So that was one way that we did it, and many other ways. We emphasized more traditional media and social media. We used, at the time, it was when social media was really starting more generally. We use social media to share our side of the story. What's happening on the ground, who are we, and trying to say this is Rwanda. The Rwanda you're talking about is some like boogeyman. It's not a boogeyman. We are a country with people. Now today, the toxicity and the hate speech that is happening can really almost push you to say, I can't handle this. This is a lot, because real people are being killed in the Eastern DRC. I'm from that side of the world, and people are being wiped out. This isn't some fancy TikTok that people are having and kumbaya concerts. People are being killed in the Eastern DRC because they are Tutsi. They're being hunted. There's hate speech on radio. This is very serious. And so, how do you respond when one side is killing and saying that it's like a abusive husband. They beat on their wives and they say, it's her fault, right? So how do you respond when the number of people on one side is, millions, and we are but 14 million? But I would say that most important thing is to do the same thing. We have to view it as, how do we respond to this story that's being told about us that isn't true? And I think young people have really taken the lead on that, to talk about, as Rwandans, who we are, and to show facts on the ground in the Eastern DRC, using the tools that we have, which is social media, because other people are using very, very well articulated narratives. I always tell, at least my students in communication, that you have to be very careful to understand what is the narrative that is being told. So when I receive information about China or I receive information about Russia, I always say, hey guys, you have to be very careful. What information are you where are you getting your information? Because there's always a narrative at play. What is the narrative of this media house that is saying something? And so our narrative is to show the country that is Rwanda, and young people are doing it, and they should keep doing it. And as we've learned from our elders, why should someone tell you who you are when you know that you're not this person and you keep quiet? They say things about us as Rwandans and we keep quiet. No. And especially us who are living witnesses to what has happened. There's someone who's sitting in Belgium and they're saying, we're victimized, never stepped foot in Congo. And me, who born and raised, who knows what's happening, who have members of my family who have been killed in Kinshasa, members of my family have been wiped out in the Eastern DRC, I cannot be quiet. And that's the attitude that we have to have. Social media is... Politics is also about fighting. And I think we will not get, as a country, particularly for young people, we have to understand that our elders have really given up a lot to make sure, and I mean in the sense that they fought the hard stuff. As I think Afande Kabarebe, he's the one who said, no one's shooting at you. It's true, nobody's shooting at us. So the least we can do is use our voice to say something that is real about our country.
Talking about elders, I am of the view that we are fundamentally mirror images of the people who raised us. Whether that mirror is good or bad, that's besides the point, but we are those mirrors. Now, when you think about your late father, Roger Munyampenda, and you think about the dreams that he had as a young man, as a granddad, and the dreams that he had for you. Do you think that you have been able to live his dream?
I hope to be able to live his dreams. I think my dad was raised in a time, he got to experience the opportunities. He was, I think, a lot of us who were raised in the Congo were very privileged on the education side. We got to go to, my dad got a good education and he was able to get good opportunities for work very early on. But, one of the things he said to me much older was, you cannot build a good future in a country that doesn't want you. It's a big reflection coming from someone who believed he was Congolese until he was in his 40s. And then they said, please leave the country. And he said, what do you mean leave the country? I'm Congolese. And they said, no, right? He said that to me. You cannot build in a country that wakes up in the morning and says you aren't a citizen. So in the country where you are a citizen, you have a responsibility to build. And I think that's something that both my parents have really, inculcated in us. You don't get to live outside of your community. You don't get to say, I'm in this, my dad was most people know him as a brilliant engineer. And you don't get to say, I'm this brilliant engineer, I'm going to go to South Africa, and I'm going to go to the US, and then, look at me and my CV, and I'm VP of this place. What are your skills and your capabilities doing for your country? I think in that sense, I hope that I'm living up to his expectations. But my dad was also, I think, a really forward thinker. Like in everything. Like just before he died, he was working on hydrogen energy, hydrogen cell. So he always believed that we had to be thinking ahead on how to become independent, energy independent, food independent. And he was obsessed with this idea of Rwanda being independent at every, how do we build the private sector to be independent? Because he kept thinking that if we become independent, then we always come to the table with power. Because you can refuse and say, no, I'm fine. I don't want to do this because you are not dependent, which is the same idea, by the way, that the president has. So I'm also, with age, becoming a bit more obsessed with this idea. And the other thing I have to say is, on the thinking, my dad used to always, when we were younger, we would respond flippantly to something, and he'd be like, wait, is your brain working? And I find myself doing that to my kids now, by the way. But I think this idea of thinking deeply. So he used to always say, me and him we were the political debaters in my family. So my brother's an engineer, my sister's keep me out of these conversations. But I would sit and I would tell him, this is what I think, and how come you old people don't want to, you don't want to leave place with young people, and blah, blah, blah. And he'd be like, where is this thought coming from? What is the substance of your argument? And so I think definitely in that sense, I have picked up from that, because I really do, obsessively think that we have to get strong thinkers and doers as well, because it's not enough to just be baraza conversations, telling people your opinions. But I do think that we have to think about how do we become independent in every sense of the word as a country, because that has always been the vision of Rwanda, right? Even in the times of pre-colonial times. So yes, I am living his dreams. And one thing I can say is, my dad, he learned Kinyarwanda late. He was, and I used to always tease him you can't even say you're Congolese anymore, because you don't even. Your Lingala is not good anymore. Mine has completely, almost completely gone. And he kept saying, this is home. And so he had also, very late in life, come to this belonging, this sense of belonging in Rwanda. So in that way, yes.
When I found out that you'd be coming on the podcast, I put that out on social media and asked people to share their questions with you. To share the question that they would like me to ask you.
Okay.
I chose some, and this one is going to be, you can keep it short, but I chose some of the more interesting ones. There are about 5 of them.
Okay.
Right? But we'll keep it short. So, first question. Is it true that you turned down an offer to join cabinet?
No, there was no offer.
Where did that rumor come from?
I don't know. I think last year, the sports thing, people were on radio. I was very confused. I think people in Rwanda always view it's a compliment. They'll say, you should be minister. And, I think it's great. And I'm really flattered by people's trust. But, there's so many ways to serve. And I'm doing it in the best way that I can, and very happy. But there was no decline. I didn't decline anything,
Yeah, you never got a phone call and said no?
No, I don't even, honestly, that one is very simple. No, yes.
Okay. If you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Better financial planning. I think, we were talking about this earlier. You have to really be very good at understanding what you want to do, and one of the things I did is I've always had great jobs, and I just did not save, and I did not financially plan well, and I'm living the consequences of that today, as an almost 40-year-old, as you said. And I think if I could go back to my younger self, I would say, Nathalie, do not waste your time trying to be anything or anything. Save your money, so you can be, more comfortable in life later. So save your money, young people. Use that money, invest it, but don't. There's only so much fries you can eat. You will be fat at my age and running at the gym like me, myself, every day. So save your money.
Many young people struggle to bridge the gap between education and employment. So what advice would you give them of, again, how to bridge that gap between education and getting a job? And what is Kepler doing differently to address this very issue?
Yeah, most employers know us as the Employment University. We work a lot on transferable skills. So that is collaboration, teamwork. So soft skills is really important. So I think soft skills are essentially the difference between two good candidates. You want to, if you have, everybody studies.
When you talk about soft skills, what do you mean?
Yeah. So that's what I was going to say. So both of you have engineering degrees, but one guy knows how to talk to influence people to get work done. They collaborate well. They work in teams. They communicate well. So soft skills include good communication. They are on time. Those are called the professional skills. They respect deadlines. Those are the things that employers like to see. And that's what we teach our students from the first day they walk in. And I think I want to say that if you want to have a strong transition to employment, it's not enough to have what we call the hard skills. So pure engineering. They also want people who can work on projects. How can you make a project timeline and meet it? Those are the additional skills that people should be seeking. And by the way, communication for me is a core skill for everyone. Whether you are a doctor, is how you speak to patients, patient care. Whether you're a lawyer, how do you make sure that you are responding to the clients that you have? So I think soft skills, digital skills are really important. That's why most employers love our students. We start with the computer very, 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 from the first day. They have to learn how to type 50 words per minute. That's the thing at Kepler. And when they start, these are people who have never touched a computer, so they're like, it's impossible. And then now they're all typing 50 words per minute. So I think transferable skills, digital skills, soft skills, very important. For anyone trying to get a job.
What do you do when someone what do you do when someone sees you as a competitor while you see them as a partner?
Yeah, the best way, the only things you can control is yourself. And for me, I've always, truly, one of the reasons, and every time I move away from this, I find myself in this self-pity cycle. I think you have to really view yourself and your improvement and your development as the only competition. The only thing standing in, there's things that you cannot control. You cannot control if you get promoted or not. You cannot control if you get the job or not. But there are things you can control. You can control your attitude. You can control the excellence of your work. You can control your attitude and how you work with people, because that's a big reason why people don't get promoted, by the way. They'll be like, I'm the best at my job, but you're also an asshole. And that's why you're not being promoted, right? I hope I'm allowed to say that on your podcast. But there are things that you can control, and you really have to work on them. We all of us as human beings have what my leadership coach likes to call a shadow. My shadow is impatience. I'm extremely impatient, and I truly have to work on this on a daily basis. And shadow means that it's constantly with you, And at the sun, it's the highest. So there are times under pressure where your shadow shows up more, and so you have to really structure yourself. Before you speak, write that email, because in that email you have to tone down the anger, tone down the impatience, and eventually you start to become a bit more normal when you're working with people. So I would say, you have to work on the things that you can control. If someone sees you as a competitor, you have to view it as, how do I get us to the point where we both see it as a win-win? And sometimes for young people who are taught by these weird motivational speakers, which, by the way, I want to say, I hope young people can just turn off the motivational speaking. A lot of it is bullshit. If it requires for this person to win more, for you to win, let them win more. The most amazing thing that can happen is that both of you win. And this person says, oh, I got them. I manipulated them into winning, but you also won. And I'm at a point where I don't know if it's age also, because maybe I was different as a younger person. But people want to win. If you allow people to win and provide a win-win situation, it's going to work.
Last question. What's the plan for Kepler Volleyball Club next season? What do you plan to? How do you plan to make it a bit more competitive?
I can't say those things, but we're going to do some lineup changes for sure. And
okay, I did not even know you guys were not competitive. Was there a problem?
We lost in the semifinal. Volleyball is a do-or-die situation. It's not like basketball where you have best of 5 or best of 7. It's best of 3. So you have to win 2 games, and we lost. And we did have an expectation to lift the title this season. So it was a huge disappointment for me personally and for the team. But sports is like that. I think a lot of someone told me recently, how come you don't cry at big games when you lose? And I was like, I don't know if it's because I'm a woman that they expect that I would be emotional, but sports is like that. You big wins. Even the Lakers, who have millions of dollars invested, have really bad seasons, and sometimes multiple bad seasons. So, as presidents, we work like presidents of teams. We work as much as we can to bring the best resources, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. This season was a very hard loss for us. I was stunned into silence when we lost. But next season we will improve.
How do you navigate that sense of? And this is my personal question. How do you navigate that sense of failure?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was younger, I kept saying, just keep it pushing. Don't feel anything. Keep it pushing. Don't show that you're weak. I think you do have to absorb how much it hurts. Like for me, when we lost the volleyball season, I went home and I sat in silence. And it was a high level of emotion. So feel the emotions, but I think don't make it about yourself. There's a whole team that is feeling loss. They've put their hearts and minds and bodies to be at a professional athlete. I always tell people, fans spend a lot of time talking, but if any of us were given an opportunity to play these type of high-level games against high-level teams. By the way, volleyball, not to toot the horn of volleyball, but volleyball is a really competitive sport, and every single team that we play against has great Rwandan players. Like, you will be playing against 6 players on the court that are the top. And the next team you play with, 6 players on the top. So you're constantly playing with a high level of and it means that you're going to lose. And so we come together as a team, and I say, you're the leader. You have to say, it's tough. So take some time off, and we'll come back at it again. I think, none of us are superhuman. So feel what you need to feel, but always focus on the future. What can we do next to make sure that we win? And don't work out of emotion. A lot of fans and other teams and other former volleyball players or basketball players, they'll come and be like, Nathalie, do this and do that, and fire this person. And I'm by nature someone who doesn't, maybe now I would say, not by nature, I learned this, but I take my time, and I will analyze with our team, because it's not just myself. We have a team of 20 that work in the sports department, and say, what happened here? What's happening here with the coaches? What can we improve? And then you move to the next step. But yeah, I mean, sports is high level of emotion every weekend. Like, I feel like I've done more feeling since I started sports than my entire life, because every weekend I'm either crying or shouting in joy. So the ups and downs are crazy. And I love sports. Like, it's my life now. I take my kids to sports games. My poor husband, is competing with sports for my time, and he's losing terribly. But yeah, I mean, hopefully when my kids are a bit older, I'm going to be the real sports mama.
How do you create balance? Because like you said, so husband, 2 kids, family engagements, Kepler, writing, you're only one Nathalie.
Yeah.
How do you create balance? And I think this is an important thing, because especially for women, I feel that there's also more pressure on you to be the perfect mom, to be the perfect homemaker, to be the perfect sibling. How do you navigate all those things and not feel bad all the time?
Yeah. I think mom guilt or woman guilt is like a permanent thing. And there's seasons. No one has got it going on well. Anybody who tells you that is selling you something. Right now, in this season, I'm doing very poorly with the husband. And I told him that, hey, the next few years is bad. And I mean, I'm not doing well. On that part of the scorecard, I'm on like a E or an F. But, one thing that I committed to is that I would give the best to my kids. So I'm trying very hard there. Because these people are dependent on me. You brought them in this life. You need to make sure you're there. And in this season, I'm building something new, which is sports, which means it's taking more of my time than I would even say the education part. But I do have my responsibilities and deadlines, and those things need to be done. But so in other words, you have to navigate priorities in each season and be very clear to the people around you what season you're in, right? So I'm not doing well on the sibling part. I'm not doing well on the daughter side for sure, as my mom reminds me often. But in this season, I'm building sports. The writing, I'm not writing at all, as you can tell. I don't produce any more writing. But there will come a time when I'm going to, the sports side will be a bit more mature, and then I will maybe go back to writing and improve my report card in my personal life. But one thing I will say is I gym every day. I've become like a gym person. And the reason I've become a gym person is, for women, I want to end with this, that it's really important to prioritize your health and your dreams. Because as a mother and as a leader, you become always about other things. You have to take care of your kids. You have to make sure they're thriving and meeting their milestones. Very important. You have to be a good wife. You have to be a good leader. You have to make sure that everyone on your team is doing well. So I will know who has a birthday, who has a baby. But are you taking care of yourself? Are you taking care of your health? And for me, my health is a priority, and I do not miss the gym. The gym is my holy time, and I do not miss it because it is important for me not to have a stroke. It's important for me to be in my best, because you are now in the best shape of your life. You're confident. And the other thing is, write down often what your dreams are, so that you remember what you're doing this for. And am I working towards my personal goal? I would like to start my PhD, even though I swore I would never go back to school. A PhD is in my future. Now, when the PhD comes around, will I be able to do that in 100% sports? No. So it's really just about seasons, right? And how do you make sure that you're doing the best you can in season? But if you expect to have a report card where you're in the A+ in everywhere, you will kill yourself very young, yeah? And if you expect, the other thing with women is, if you expect that no one's talking about you, you are going to be very disappointed, because society has a very high expectations of women.
Our society especially.
Yes. You just have to let go of some of these things. And if they call you a bad wife, you are, I always tell someone, you're a bad wife. I'll be like, right now, 100%. I'm not doing well, But does that mean I'm a bad wife overall with bad intentions? No. It's just that the season in which we are in, I have the bandwidth for these 4 or 5 things, right? And there's a season when my husband was a bad husband when he was building his restaurant business. No one gave him an F, right? So that's the reality. You have to accept, at least for me, I'm not saying accept and don't try and change the perspective, but personally, I do not have the capacity to change society on how they view women. I'm not going to fight them to change how they view women. And the best that I can do is live an authentic life to myself. Meaning, am I ethical? Am I doing the things I've promised to the people I've promised? Am I living true? Am I taking care of myself? That is also really important. You have to add that to the priorities in your day. What have you done for yourself today? It's really important, because one thing I refuse to do, and I see this with older women, is you've given up everything for your children, for your husband, for your work, for your country. And then at 60, you're like, nobody cares about me, and you're bitter. No one should care about you. You should care about you. You need to love yourself enough that in your 40s, in your late 30s, like me, pick up the gym and do something, Don't complain about how you look. I don't have time to go to the gym. You absolutely have time to go to the gym. You absolutely have time to go for a walk. Women, we have to be more in control. We're not victims. You have to take some time for yourself. That's the only thing I can say. And in that sense, I'm doing well. But will I do well maybe in the future? Maybe not. But you have to carve out time for your health and for your dreams. Because a woman who has, time for herself and dreams, for her kids, my daughter always says, hey, she'll be somewhere and she'll be like, Mom, my mom went to the gym. Or do you know my mom's a CEO? And somebody asked her, what does CEO mean? She's like, my mom's a teacher. So she doesn't know, because for her, teachers are, the epitome of great and power. She's like, my mom's a teacher, right? So you are modeling for someone, and they want to see a happy woman. So you need to figure out what makes you happy. I think, we cannot always be on the receiving end of what society is giving us. Let them talk about you, but also do something. So at least they talk about something you're actually doing.
And with that, my dear friend, Nathalie, thank you so much for joining me on the long form. So much that I've taken away from this conversation. And I'm sure that a lot of young people, a lot of women have done the same. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Did you have a good time?
I had a good time. I talked a lot, so I hope that it's been useful.
I'm pretty sure that. I enjoyed it. So that's really why I do this. Nah, I'm just joking. Yeah. But on a serious note, thank you so much. There was the last part where I had a lot of powerful moments. Again, for women, putting some space for yourself.
Yeah.
Understanding that, yes, not everyone will be your friend. Some people will talk about you. And it's something that I have discussions with women quite a bit, is the idea of just being kind to yourself.
Yeah.
And just understanding, listen, you're just human.
Yeah.
Right? You're just human. You're just trying your best, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But on the same side, I look at you and you're quite a force of nature, a superwoman at some level.
Yeah, I think we're all doing the best we can. And the best we can is, we should really just try to do a little bit better every year. But you really do have to be kind to yourself. If you put the pressure on yourself of everything going well, perfect wife, perfect mother, perfect person at work, perfect people to society, going to every birthday, having makeup done all the time, having your hair right. Someone was telling me, even our locks have to be locked every day. Like, you're going to die. It's so heavy. And emotionally, it causes so many mental health issues. And you find yourself, people becoming fraudsters to live up to this ideal of what people expect of you. Be at peace. Really, it really requires, like, society doesn't tell you, but you really have to work at being at peace with yourself. Why are you buying this car? Is this car necessary? Me, I have a small car. I will continue to have it's not even a small car. It's a small Jeep, and I will continue to have it because that's what I can afford. Like, we really have to be at peace with ourselves as much as possible.
And where we are in that stage of life.
Yes. If you're 22, what are you trying to do? Why are you trying to be like me, who's almost 40? There's 16 years between us, a lot of work, a lot of experience, and a lot of money wasted, because now I'm better at it. Now I don't go out. I don't want to eat fries outside. Actually, I prefer the food in my house. But it took me a good 10, 15 years of eating fries before I said, by the way, fries make you fat. But I can eat at home. There's rice at home, as our parents used to say. People should put themselves under less pressure. Social media is not real. Friendships happen in real life. Relationships are not beta and alpha and all this nonsense people are talking about. Build real relationships. That really is how you keep yourself at peace. And all these things about saying I'm mentally ill, no, you just don't spend enough time with other people. You're too much on your screen. And by the way, screen time, I think, is the difference between productivity and good mental health is reducing your screen time by 50%. That's the equation. That's the math equation. If you reduce your screen time 50%, you already, in better mental health. Anyways, we're already over our time.
No, now I'm just like, oh my goodness, I'm on Twitter a bit too much.
Oh my, I am. I've actually put it on my phone now. It turns off. You can set a timer where it turns off all social media after an hour or after 2. Because I wasn't able to be disciplined to do it myself.
No, Twitter, there's too much happening in the world. I need to know.
And it's so toxic. It raises your blood pressure. We really have to pay attention to this.
Yeah.
For young people, think about it. There is such a nice world outside that you are missing out because you're too busy fighting people on the internet. These people who don't exist. And when you meet them in real life, they can't even talk to you. You know, these young men who can't even jazz, what we used to call chat in French. They can't chat you because they've learned everything on TikTok. But people talk in real life. People are human beings. They want to have a conversation. They want to get to know you. Like, anyhow.
Nathalie, thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
me. This was fun.
It was fun, yeah. Very good.
And that's a wrap for this week's episode. Thank you so much for sticking with us until the very end. I'd actually love to hear your thoughts on today's conversation. So drop a comment below and join the discussion. You can also join us on the social media of your choice. And if you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with a friend and invite them to the conversation. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care.